Welcome, brave hobbyists, to the Unpainted Horde, the podcast dedicated to celebrating and sometimes lamenting the glorious world of tabletop miniatures. I'm Finn.
And I'm Luna. We're here to wallow in the plastic shame alongside you and talk about some of the biggest and smallest miniatures games out there and all those in between. Each week, we'll be diving into rule sets, miniature ranges, painting tips, and everything else that fuels our plastic crack addictions.
This time, we are headed into the world of Rangers of Shadow Deep.
Yeah.
Where you command a company of Rangers against the forces of, well, you guessed it, the Shadow Deep.
That's right.
Now, we're assuming you've, messed around with miniatures games before, so we're not going to bore you with the basics of, rolling dice and moving figures around.
Right.
This deep dive is all about giving you that insider knowledge, those little tidbits that you need to hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
In this really grim and gritty world.
It's a tough world out there. Yeah.
I'm already kind of picturing myself as like this grizzled veteran leading my company through like dangerous forests and crumbling ruins. I'm ready to go. So where do we start?
Well, I think, what makes Rangers of Shadow Deep so unique is really the focus on narrative and strategic depth.
Okay.
You're not just moving pieces on a board, you're really crafting a story.
Oh, that's that.
Yeah, and making tough choices that are going to shape your Ranger company's fate.
Okay, so let's talk about the heroes of the hour. Let's talk about the Rangers themselves. How do we go from like this blank slate to a legendary hero?
Well, every hero needs a good foundation, and that starts with stats.
Okay.
You've got your classic move, fight, and shoot, but then it gets really interesting with armor, will, and health. And these really represent, the Ranger's resilience.
Okay.
Both physically and mentally.
Oh, okay. So like kind of a more well-rounded view of what a hero is, not just, how hard they can hit.
Exactly. You might be tempted to pour all of your points into a fight, right, for that classic Aragorn build.
Well, yeah.
But a high will stat really unlocks powerful abilities that kind of reflect his lineage.
Oh, interesting.
Allows him to resist fear, maybe even manipulate the minds of his enemies.
Okay, so it's all about those strategic choices right from the get-go.
Absolutely, yeah.
And building a character that really reflects who you're trying to create. Now, the rule book mentions build points.
Yes.
So how do those play into customization?
Yeah, so build points are kind of like your currency. To turn that generic ranger into a unique hero.
Okay.
And you can spend them on heroic abilities. These are kind of special moves or feats of skill, or even spells if your ranger has a little touch of the arcane in their blood.
All right, so if we're going full Aragorn here, which heroic abilities are we prioritizing?
Well, Aragorn's known for his swordsmanship. So Deadly Strike is a must-have.
Yeah.
It turns rolls of 18 or 19 into critical hits. So, your ranger is just a whirlwind of steel.
So it's just like in the movies, he's just like taking out orcs left and right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But here's where the strategy comes in.
Okay.
Don't underestimate the power of inspiring. It grants a bonus to the willpower rolls of nearby allies. So this reflects Aragorn's leadership, his ability to rally those around him.
So again, it's not just about being the strongest or the toughest, but it's that leadership element as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, I can see it now.
Yeah.
My Aragorn out there, he's rallying his companions. There's a horde of orcs coming at him, and he's like, "To me, lads."
Exactly.
I love it. All right, so we've got our Aragorn-inspired ranger.
Yeah.
He's got high will. He's got some awesome heroic abilities.
He's ready.
But a true ranger needs more than just combat skills, right?
Of course.
We're talking about wilderness expertise, the ability to track, to survive, to outwit the enemy. What about skills?
Yeah, skills are absolutely crucial in Rangers of Shadow Deep.
Okay.
They represent your Rangers, non-combat expertise. And these are vital, for navigating those treacherous landscapes and overcoming obstacles.
All right.
Aragorn, for instance, would excel at tracking, allows him to kind of anticipate enemy movements.
Okay.
Stealth for those moments when a silent approach is essential.
Oh, yeah. You got to be able to sneak around.
Absolutely.
All right. So far we've got our Aragorn. He's moving. He can fight. He's stealthy. He can track. But even the most skilled ranger needs the right tools for the job, right?
Of course.
What about equipment?
The gear.
The gear.
Love it.
What are we strapping to our ranger here?
So You've got 6 item slots to fill,
Okay.
and this can be anything from, your weapons, your armor, to vital supplies.
Hmm.
Think swords, bows, throwing knives, but also things like rope for scaling cliffs,
Oh, right. Very practical stuff.
healing herbs for patching up wounds. You'll need to really consider the strengths and weaknesses of your build when you're thinking about this.
Right.
So, for instance, if you're leaning into that two-handed weapon bonus for extra damage.
Yeah, like a big, huge axe or something like that.
Exactly. You're gonna have to plan your tactics around close combat.
Oh, right.
You can't really be, hanging back with a big two-handed axe.
No, you're going to have to be right up in their face.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
So it depends on how you've built your character.
So our Aragorn, he's probably got his trusty sword, maybe a quiver full of arrows for those ranged encounters,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and I don't know, maybe a few throwing knives just for those silent takedowns.
Absolutely. You gotta have those silent takedowns.
Gotta have options, right?
Exactly.
All right, so this is really starting to paint a vivid picture. We've got our Aragorn-inspired ranger.
Yeah.
We've got his gear, but even Aragorn, even the best of the best, sometimes they need a little backup, right?
Of course, you can't do it alone.
So let's talk companions. I'm assuming this is where those recruitment points come in?
You got it.
All right.
Recruitment points, you have a limited number of those to spend, and you're assembling your fellowship, right?
Okay.
Each companion comes at a cost.
Okay.
So you got to really think strategically. Do you go for, a large company of maybe less experienced recruits, or a small elite force of seasoned veterans?
Right. So it's about quality versus quantity in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, do you favor, loyal hounds for their tracking abilities,
Oh, okay.
or skilled trackers for their knowledge of the Shadow Deep?
Right, because you need that. You need those people who know the land.
Exactly.
All right, so this is already making me think about, tough decisions.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is. I feel the weight of command here, but I'm ready for it. Now, we're not just sending these companions out there like, cannon fodder, are we?
No, of course not.
They can improve too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Companions aren't just static units. They're living, breathing characters.
Okay.
They can be customized with equipment, and they even gain experience.
Oh.
So they become valuable assets that, evolve alongside your ranger.
So this is really making me want to dive into a campaign right now, but before we get ahead of ourselves, I think we got to break down how a game actually plays out.
Yeah.
What's the turn structure like in Rangers of Shadow Deep?
So each turn consists of 4 phases: ranger, creature, companion, and event.
Okay, so 4 phases. That sounds structured, but I bet there's tons of tactical depth within each one.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
So let's start with the ranger phase, right?
Yeah.
This is where you, the player, get to shine.
All right. I like it already.
You activate your ranger and up to 2 companions who are close by, and each can perform actions like moving, fighting, shooting, casting spells.
Okay.
It's really all about prioritizing your targets, maximizing your attacks,
All right.
positioning your figures strategically.
So if I'm thinking like Aragorn here, I'm sending my companions in, creating a diversion so I can swoop in and deliver the decisive blow.
Exactly. It's about using those companions' strengths, coordinating their actions with your ranger's abilities.
Now, I'm curious about those times when, stealth is paramount.
Yeah.
Can I move my figures without alerting the enemy?
That's where the stealth skill comes in.
Oh.
If your ranger or companion has a high stealth skill, they can attempt to move undetected.
Okay.
You roll a die, add their stealth skill, and if the total meets or exceeds the target number, they slip past the enemy's senses.
So I'm picturing Aragorn and his companions, they're sneaking through an ancient forest or something.
Exactly, like shadows in the night.
I love it. Okay. So we've talked about how our rangers move, but what about those forces of darkness?
Yeah.
How do they operate during their turn? Is it just random chaos?
Not at all. That's where the creature phase comes in.
Okay.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Rangers of Shadow Deep uses an AI system to control the Shadow Deep's minion. Each enemy type has predefined behaviors
Okay.
that dictate their actions. But it also adds this element of predictability and challenge.
Okay.
So some might be aggressive, they just charge headlong into combat,
Okay.
while others might be more cunning. Maybe they favor ranged attacks or flanking maneuvers.
Okay.
The key is that these behaviors are all detailed in the rulebook.
Oh, okay.
So you can study them and you can try to anticipate your opponent's moves.
So it's not just about reacting to what the enemy does, but it's about trying to outwit the system itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
That adds like a whole new level of strategy.
It does.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm already trying to think of like how I'm going to outmaneuver those creatures. Okay, so we've covered the ranger and creature phases. What about those other companions that weren't close enough to activate in the first phase?
Yeah, that's where the companion phase comes in.
Oop.
Gives you another opportunity to activate any remaining companions. So this allows you to, reinforce your defenses, press the attack, maybe even pull off some clever flanking maneuvers.
Okay, so it's about like timing and coordination.
Absolutely.
This turn structure is really starting to make sense. It's like each phase has its own little mini game almost.
Right, yeah. Keeps the action flowing.
I like it. But we haven't talked about the heart of any good miniatures game.
Right.
Combat. How does that work in Rangers of Shadow Deep?
So combat in Ranges of Shadow Deep is more than just luck, right? It's about positioning, timing, and using your ranger strengths. So when you attack, you roll 2 dice, one for your ranger and one for the enemy.
Okay.
You add their fight stat to their respective rolls, and whoever has the highest total wins the fight.
All right. So, high fight stat, you've got a better chance of winning.
That's a good start, yeah.
Makes sense. But, what about those heavily armored enemies?
Yeah.
Surely they can withstand, like, even a blow from Aragorn.
That's where the armor stat comes into play.
Okay.
So you subtract the loser's armor from the winner's total.
Okay.
And that remaining value is the damage inflicted.
So, like, a heavily armored opponent could potentially just shrug off, like,
Right.
a really powerful attack.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is already making me think about, like, target prioritization.
Yeah.
Do I go for the weaker enemies first?
Right.
Or try and take out those, like, huge, tough enemies?
Exactly. These are the kind of tactical decisions that you're going to be making constantly.
Oh, okay. This is really, it's not just about brute force.
No.
It's strategy.
Absolutely.
It's knowing when to strike, knowing who to strike.
Exactly.
Oh, man, this combat system sounds like incredibly nuanced. And then we've got heroic abilities on top of that and spells and all sorts of craziness.
It can get really wild.
Okay, so I'm thinking about ranged attacks.
Yeah.
Do they work the same as melee combat?
So shooting attacks follow a similar principle.
Okay.
You roll a die, add your ranger's shoot stat, and compare the total to a target number.
Okay.
And that target number is determined by factors like range, cover, and target size.
So if I've got, Aragorn out there and he's a crack shot with a bow, I need to make sure he's got a clear line of sight.
Absolutely.
And I need to take into account any cover the enemy might have.
Exactly. And remember those heroic abilities we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
Some of them grant bonuses to shooting attacks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So make your ranger even more deadly from afar.
All right. This combat system is really making my brain work here.
Yeah, good.
But, are rangers invincible? Can they, like, just shrug off any damage?
Even the mightiest ranger is vulnerable.
Okay.
If a ranger takes damage that reduces their health to 0, they're knocked out of the fight.
Okay.
And at the end of the scenario, you'll roll on a survival table to determine their fate.
Okay, what does that mean?
So, they might recover fully.
Okay.
They might suffer, a debilitating injury.
Okay.
Or they could perish from their wounds.
Oh, wow. So every mission has, like, real stakes.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not just like, oh, you lost the mission, try again. It's like you could lose someone permanently.
It's a tough world out there.
This is really making me think long term. Like, I got a plan for the future of my company.
Absolutely.
So speaking of growth and evolution, our Aragorn-inspired ranger, he can't just stay the same throughout, right?
Right.
He needs to level up. He needs to, become more legendary. How does that work?
So that's where experience points and leveling up come in. After each mission, your ranger and companions earn experience based on their performance.
Okay, so, classic RPG mechanics, gain experience, level up, become more powerful.
Yeah.
But what's the Rangers of Shadow Deep twist on this?
So each time your ranger gains a level, you get to choose from a range of exciting options.
Okay, what kinds of options?
So you can boost their stats, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes them stronger, faster, more resilient. You can improve their skills, granting them greater expertise in areas like stealth, tracking, or even read runes for deciphering ancient scrolls, uncovering hidden lore.
Read runes. I can totally see Aragorn, deciphering some ancient prophecy about the fate of Middle-earth. I mean, Alladore, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, what else can I do with those experience points?
You can acquire new heroic abilities, or spells, which really expands your ranger's tactical options.
Okay.
Maybe a new combat technique for close quarters encounters, or a powerful spell to unleash a wave of fire upon your enemies.
So with each level, my ranger becomes more and more like that legendary hero that I'm envisioning.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and it's not just the ranger.
No, it's
The companions, they're leveling up too, right?
they gain what are called progression points,
Okay.
which allow you to improve their stats and equipment. So, your whole company grows stronger together.
Oh, that's great. So we've got this real sense of like camaraderie.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're all going through this together. All right, this is sounding incredible. I am itching to start a campaign and see how these mechanics all play out. But before we do that, before we wrap up, I got to ask about that campaign that's included in the rulebook, Burning Light.
Burning Light, yes.
What's the story there? What are we getting into?
Burning Light throws you into a desperate search for a legendary artifact. It's called the Decanter of St. Amelia,
Okay.
and it's said to hold immense healing power,
Oh, wow.
able to cure wounds, dispel poisons, maybe even banish curses.
That sounds like something Aragorn would risk his life for.
Absolutely, it's a powerful artifact.
So what kind of dangers are we talking about in our pursuit of this artifact?
So the decanter is hidden within the ruins of a once sacred convent, now overrun by the forces of the Shadow Deep.
Oh, great.
And here's where things get really interesting. The campaign's non-linear.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you choose which areas of the convent to explore.
Okay.
So you're charting your own path.
All right, so each playthrough could be totally different,
Exactly.
depending on the choices that I make.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It adds that replayability factor.
Okay, so what kind of challenges are we expecting to face in this ruined convent? Are we talking like giant spiders, lurking ghouls? Are we talking, something even worse?
Well, that's a story for part 2 of our deep dives.
Oh, come on.
Stay tuned.
All right, all right. I guess we'll have to wait.
You'll have to wait.
But I'm already hooked.
Okay.
I can't wait to find out what horrors await us in that ruined convent.
It'll be good.
All right, so make sure to join us next time as we continue our deep dive into Rangers of Shadow Deep. We're going to be exploring the Burning Light campaign, delving into the horrifying creatures we'll encounter, and uncovering the secrets of this legendary artifact. See you then.
See you then.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time, we were just starting to uncover the mysteries of the Burning Light campaign. Our Aragorn-inspired ranger and his carefully selected companions are on the hunt for the legendary decanter of St. Amelia, a powerful artifact hidden within the ruins of a Shadow Deep-infested convent. You mentioned this campaign is non-linear, which I find really intriguing. What does that mean for someone like me, used for more traditional linear campaigns and miniatures games?
It means you're in control of the narrative, forging your own path through the convent's shadowy corridors and crumbling halls.
Okay.
You'll face a series of interconnected scenarios, each presenting unique challenges and objectives. The order in which you tackle these scenarios is entirely up to you.
So I could choose to explore the depths of the convent's crypts first, or perhaps focus on securing the main courtyard before venturing into the more dangerous wings.
Exactly. Each choice you make will have consequences, shaping the course of your campaign and ultimately influencing the fate of your ranger company. It adds a layer of replayability that's rare in miniatures games.
That's what I love about Rangers of Shadow Deep. It's not just about following a predetermined path. It's about making tough choices that have real impact on the story. Now, you mentioned some pretty terrifying creatures lurking within this ruined convent. What exactly are we up against in Burning Light?
Remember those AI-controlled creatures we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, the Burning Light campaign throws a whole menagerie of horrors at you. We're talking giant spiders lurking in the shadows, their webs ensnaring the unwary, ghouls feasting on the dead, their hunger insatiable, and even worse creatures spawned from the darkest depths of the Shadow Deep.
Okay, that's officially creepy. I'm already getting chills just picturing those encounters.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about even worse creatures. Don't leave me hanging. What are we talking about here? Giant mutated bats.
Yeah.
Shadowy tentacles emerging from the walls.
I don't want to spoil the surprises, but let's just say the Shadow Deep has a way of twisting and corrupting even the most mundane creatures into nightmarish abominations. You'll face enemies unlike anything you've encountered before, each requiring unique tactics and strategies to overcome.
This is making me want to grab the rule book and start planning my campaign right now. But before I get completely sidetracked, let's talk a little more about those AI rules that govern enemy behavior. We know they're not just random, but what kind of strategic depth can we expect from these AI-controlled creatures?
The beauty of the AI system is that it creates a believable and challenging opponent, even when you're playing solo.
Right.
Each creature type has a set of predefined behaviors that determine how they act and react to your ranger company's actions. Some creatures might be relentless pursuers, charging headlong into combat, while others might be more cunning, favoring ambushes and flanking maneuvers.
So I need to be constantly thinking about the enemy's potential moves, trying to anticipate their tactics and exploit their weaknesses. It's almost like playing against another human player.
Exactly, and here's where it gets even more interesting. The rulebook actually provides detailed descriptions of these AI behaviors, allowing you to study them and develop counter strategies. For example, if you know a certain type of creature always favors flanking maneuvers, you can position your companions to block their approach or set traps to catch them off guard.
That adds a fascinating layer of strategic depth to the game. It's not just about reacting to whatever the enemy does. It's about understanding their patterns and outmaneuvering them.
Precisely. It transforms what could be a simple dice rolling exercise into a dynamic battle of wits.
You mentioned earlier that some creatures might favor ambushes. Does that mean terrain plays a significant role in Rangers of Shadow Deep? I'm picturing dense forests, crumbling ruins, and treacherous swamps, all providing cover and opportunities for strategic positioning.
You're spot on. Terrain is a crucial element in Rangers of Shadow Deep. Forests provide cover for ranged attacks and stealthy approaches. Ruins offer elevated positions for archers and choke points to funnel enemies. And swamps can slow down movement and even harbor hidden dangers.
This is making me think about those skills we discussed earlier. It's not just about having a high fight stat, it's about utilizing skills like stealth and tracking to gain an advantage in specific environments.
Exactly. A skilled ranger can use the terrain to their advantage, turning the environment itself into a weapon against the forces of the Shadow Deep. For instance, a ranger with a high stealth skill could use the cover of a dense forest to approach an enemy encampment undetected, while a ranger with a high tracking skill could follow the trails of their quarry through a treacherous swamp, leading their companions to victory.
Now I'm picturing my Aragorn-inspired ranger leading his companions through a dense forest, using his skills to outmaneuver the enemy. He spots a group of ghouls lurking near an ancient ruin. What kind of tactical choices would I need to make in that situation?
Well, first you'd need to assess the situation. How many ghouls are there? What kind of terrain are you dealing with? Do you have any companions with ranged attacks? Once you have a grasp of the situation, you can start planning your attack. Perhaps you could use the cover of the forest to position your ranger and a companion with bows for a ranged attack, while another companion with a high fight stat charges in to engage the ghouls in close combat.
I can see it now, arrows flying through the air, swords clashing against the rotting flesh of the ghouls. This is getting intense. But what if things go wrong? What if my ranger takes a hit, or worse, gets knocked unconscious?
That's where those survival rolls come in. At the end of each scenario, any ranger or companion who is knocked unconscious must make a survival roll. This roll determines whether they recover fully, suffer a lasting injury, or even succumb to their wounds.
Wow, so even if you win the battle, you might still lose a valuable member of your company. That adds a whole other layer of tension to the game.
Exactly. It emphasizes the fragility of life in the Shadow Deep and forces you to make tough choices. Do you risk pushing your ranger to their limits, knowing they could suffer a debilitating injury? Or do you play it safe, potentially sacrificing a strategic advantage to protect your companions?
This is reminding me why I love miniatures games. It's not just about moving figures around a board, it's about making meaningful choices that have real consequences. Speaking of choices, we've talked a lot about tactical combat, but I'm curious about the broader strategic decisions I'll need to make in Burning Light. How do those choices affect the campaign's narrative?
Well, as you progress through the campaign, you'll face moral dilemmas and branching paths. The choices you make will determine the course of the story, influencing the alliances you forge, the enemies you face, and ultimately the fate of the decanter of St. Amelia.
So my decisions could lead me to ally with a band of rogue mages, or perhaps even strike a bargain with a shadowy creature of the Shadow Deep itself.
Exactly. The Burning Light campaign is full of twists and turns, and your choices will shape the narrative in unexpected ways.
This is all sounding incredibly engaging. I'm already starting to think about the kind of ranger company I want to create, the companions I'll recruit, and the strategic choices I'll make. But before we delve deeper into the campaign secrets, we need to talk about something crucial. Character progression. How do our heroes grow and evolve as they face the horrors of the Shadow Deep?
That's where experience points and leveling up come into play. Remember those experience points your ranger and companions earn after each mission?
Yeah.
Well, those points can be used to improve their stats, skills, and even unlock new abilities. It's all about turning your company of recruits into seasoned veterans, capable of facing the ever-increasing challenges of the Shadow Deep.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. How does leveling up actually work in Rangers of Shadow Deep? What kind of choices can I make to customize my ranger and companions as they gain experience?
Well, that's a story for part 3 of our deep dive into Rangers of Shadow Deep. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've journeyed through character creation, explored those, really cool combat and AI mechanics, and we even kind of dipped our toes into those chilling waters of the Burning Light campaign. But our hero's journey isn't over yet, is it? We've got to talk about, growth, evolution, and becoming the stuff of legends.
Right, character progression, yeah.
Character progression. I was hoping you'd say that because,
Yeah.
I'm all about, making my ranger, the absolute best they can be.
Of course, yeah.
So what are my options? How do I spend those hard-earned
Yeah.
experience points?
Well, you've got a few paths to choose from. You can boost your ranger's core stats, make them stronger, faster, tougher, all those classic heroic qualities. Or you can refine their skills, turn them into master trackers, silent stalkers, or even, experts in deciphering ancient lore.
Okay, so far so good.
Yeah.
It's like those classic RPG mechanics that, we all know and love, but I'm guessing there's a Rangers of Shadow Deep twist to this whole progression thing, right?
There's always a twist. What sets the system apart, I think, is how it directly ties into the narrative and strategic depth of the game. So, think about it. If you're playing an Aragorn-inspired ranger, investing in will not only makes them mentally resilient, but it also unlocks abilities that really reflect his lineage, like resisting fear or even manipulating the minds of his enemies.
Okay, that's really cool. It's not just about number crunching and min-maxing your character. It's about those choices that enhance the role-playing aspect.
Yeah.
It creates a much more immersive experience.
Absolutely.
Now, what about heroic abilities and spells? Can I learn new ones as I level up?
Oh, absolutely. As your ranger gains experience, they unlock access to new and more powerful abilities. So you might learn, a devastating combat technique perfect for dispatching those heavily armored foes.
Okay.
Or perhaps acquire a spell that can, turn the tide of battle in your favor.
So, I could start with basic abilities like Deadly Strike, but then as my ranger progresses, I can branch out into more specialized, more powerful options.
Yeah.
It's like watching my hero evolve into a legend right before my eyes.
Exactly. It's really rewarding. And remember, character progression isn't just about the ranger. Your companions level up as well.
Oh, right. We've got to make sure they're keeping up.
Exactly. They gain what are called progression points, which you can then use to enhance their stats and equipment.
Yeah.
So, it really is a collaborative experience with my entire company growing stronger together. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of companions, I think we need to talk a little bit more about, how to actually use them effectively in combat. We know they can flank enemies and create distractions and things like that. But are there any deeper strategies involved? Oh, yeah, absolutely. The key really is to understand the strengths and weaknesses of each companion type and use those strengths to complement your ranger's abilities. So, for example, if your ranger excels in ranged combat, you might pair them with a companion who can, charge into melee, draw the enemy's attention, and give you a clear shot.
So
Nice.
I need to think about my companions not just as individual units, but as extensions of my ranger's tactics. We're creating a cohesive fighting force.
Exactly. And as your companions gain experience, their abilities improve as well, which allows for, even more sophisticated strategies.
Okay, this is really making me rethink my whole approach to team composition. It's not just about, who I bring along, but how their abilities are going to evolve, how they're going to synergize with my ranger.
Yeah, it's really a long-term kind of planning. You're adapting your strategies as your company gains experience.
It really emphasizes that Rangers of Shadow Deep is a game of, evolving challenges, and the only way to survive is to grow stronger and smarter with each encounter.
Absolutely. Adapt or die.
It's like a constant dance between those tactical decisions and those big picture strategic planning. You're reacting to the immediate threats, but you're always keeping the bigger picture in mind.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
This has been an absolutely incredible journey into the world of Rangers of Shadow Deep. We've covered everything from character creation, combat, AI-controlled enemies, the Burning Light campaign, And now, with this deeper understanding of character progression, I think we're ready to face whatever the Shadow Deep throws at us.
I think so too.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this deep dive into Rangers of Shadow Deep. Make sure to check out the links in the show notes below for more information. And as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, may your dice rolls be ever in your favor and your courage unwavering in the face of the Shadow Deep. Well, that's all the time we have for this week, folks. Thanks for joining us on the Unpainted Horde. We hope you learned something, and maybe even feel a little bit better about that mountain of unpainted miniatures looming over you.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us spread the word and justify our addiction. Until next time, may your dice rolls be ever in your favor, and may your primer coats be thin.
This podcast was created with significant help from Google Notebook LM.